What if I told you that humanity's greatest library once held the secrets of the universe, and then vanished into smoke and legend? A place where all the knowledge of the ancient world was gathered then, without warning, lost, forever. Some say it burned, others say it was destroyed by enemies of knowledge, and a few believe it was never truly destroyed at all. This is the story of the Great Library of Alexandria, an ancient wonder shrouded in fire, myth, and mystery. And what we uncover may change how you see history itself. A world of forgotten genius long before Google, long before printed books. There was one place on earth where knowledge was king, a place built not for conquest, but for curiosity. A city within a city, a temple to wisdom. Founded in the 3rd century BCE, in Egypt's coastal jewel of Alexandria, the Great Library was the brainchild of rulers who dreamed bigger than borders. Their goal: to collect every book, every scroll, every ounce of written thought from across the known world and bring it under one roof. At its peak, it may have held hundreds of thousands of texts. From Babylonian astronomy to Indian philosophy, Egyptian medicine to early Greek science. It wasn't just a library, it was the internet of the ancient world. But over time, that beacon of human advancement would vanish without a trace. No ruins, no records. It's just rumors, legends, and a single terrifying question. How could the greatest library ever built simply disappear? Before we chase the mystery of its fall, we need to understand how it rose. Origins of the library. The story begins in the aftermath of Alexander the Great's conquests. In 332 BCE, Alexander founded the city of Alexandria in Egypt, a strategic port destined to become a crossroads of civilizations. After his death, his general Ptolemy seized control of Egypt and established a new dynasty, the Ptolemies. Greek pharaohs who ruled for nearly 300 years. Unlike most rulers of the ancient world, the Ptolemies didn't just build temples, they built institutions of thought. Around 283 BCE, Ptolemy I, or his son Ptolemy II, commissioned a massive center of learning. Not just a library, but a Mausoleum, a shrine to the Muses, the goddesses of knowledge and inspiration. Within this temple, the Great Library was born. But this wasn't just a room of books. It was a global intellectual powerhouse. The Ptolemies sent agents to buy or seize every scroll from every corner of the ancient world. Boats entering the harbor were searched. Any texts on board were copied. The originals kept. The copies returned. Some say they even tried to acquire Aristotle's private collection. Why? Because knowledge was power, and Alexandria would be the capital of that power. The library's goal was not modest. It was nothing less than to house every written work on earth. Over time, it attracted the greatest minds in science, philosophy, and literature. Mathematicians like Euclid, inventors like Hero of Alexandria, astronomers like Eratosthenes, and even early anatomists who were performing dissections centuries before Europe dared to. The library wasn't just collecting information, it was creating it. And in this temple of thought, humanity stood on the brink of scientific revolutions that wouldn't be seen again until the Renaissance 1,500 years later. But even the brightest flame casts the darkest shadow. For all its genius, the Great Library of Alexandria was also vulnerable to war, to religion, to politics, and to time. And eventually, the very forces that built the library would turn against it. How the library operated. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a building full of scrolls. It was an engine of knowledge production. It sat within the Mausoleum, a sprawling academic complex that functioned like a modern university and think tank combined. Funded by the royal treasury, the Mausoleum provided resident scholars with free housing, food, servants, and most importantly, access to the largest repository of written thought in human history. But how did this ancient powerhouse acquire so much knowledge? The Ptolemies used aggressive tactics. Every ship that docked in Alexandria's bustling port was searched. Scrolls were confiscated, copied by professional scribes, and the copies returned to the owners while the originals were archived in the library. Diplomatic envoys were sent across continents to buy rare texts or take them by force. Legends even say they borrowed scrolls from Athens. Under the pretense of copying them, then kept the originals and sent back duplicates. The library was methodically organized, likely using a proto-cataloging system developed by Callimachus, a poet and scholar. He created a 120-volume index called the Pinax, listing authors, subjects, and summaries. It is estimated the library eventually held 400,000 to 700,000 scrolls, covering everything from mathematics and astronomy to medicine, philosophy, geography, and engineering. The scholars who lived and worked here weren't just reading. They were writing, translating, debating, and inventing. It was an intellectual factory, centuries ahead of its time. But what exactly did they uncover in those scrolls? It brings us to the question that haunts historians to this day. What was inside? If the Library of Alexandria held up to 700,000 scrolls, what knowledge was actually stored inside? The answer is as fascinating as it is frustrating because most of it is now completely lost. What we do know is based on fragments, citations by later scholars, and legends passed down through the centuries. The library contained texts from across the known world: Greek philosophy, Egyptian medicine, Indian astronomy, Babylonian mathematics, Persian histories, and more. Some believe it held the works of Homer, Sophocles, and Euripides in their earliest forms, possibly even now lost plays. Others say it contained early Buddhist and Hindu texts, translated into Greek. The writings of Zoroaster and other Eastern sages may have also been archived there. There were scientific breakthroughs stored in those scrolls, many of which were forgotten for over 1,000 years. Eratosthenes, the library's chief librarian, calculated the circumference of the Earth with near-perfect accuracy, using shadows and a stick. Hero of Alexandria describes steam-powered devices, essentially prototypes of engines. Some suspect early theories of heliocentrism, the sun-centered solar system, were explored here centuries before Copernicus. Even in medicine, the ancients may have been far ahead of their time. There are records of human dissection, advanced surgical techniques, and herbal treatments used by physicians trained in Alexandria. Then there's the speculation, more legend than fact, that the library housed ancient maps detailing lands long lost to time, or even the mythical Atlantis. Some fringe theorists believe the scrolls might have held pre-Diluvian knowledge, wisdom from before the Great Flood mentioned in dozens of ancient myths. Of course, we'll never know for sure, because all of it, everything disappeared. The mystery of the destruction of the Great Library for centuries. The destruction of the Great Library has been blamed on a single catastrophic fire. But the truth is far more complex and far more tragic. The most famous suspect is Julius Caesar. In 48 BCE, during his civil war with Pompey, Caesar found himself cornered in Alexandria. To gain control of the harbor, he ordered his men to burn the enemy fleet. The fire spread quickly, possibly to nearby buildings, including storehouses believed to contain thousands of scrolls. Ancient writers like Plutarch mention this fire but disagree on whether it destroyed the main library or just part of its collection. But that wasn't the end. Fast forward to the 3rd and 4th century CE, when Christianity rose to power in the Roman Empire. As old pagan religions were outlawed, temples and institutions of classical learning were increasingly seen as heretical. The Serapeum of Alexandria, a secondary library and temple to the Greco-Egyptian god. Serapis was violently destroyed by a Christian mob in 391 CE, likely taking thousands more scrolls with it. And still, the destruction may not have been complete. Centuries later, during the Muslim conquest of Egypt in the 7th century, a legend emerged that Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab ordered the burning of all remaining books. If they agree with the Quran, he reportedly said, they're unnecessary. They contradict it, they're dangerous. But most historians now believe this story is apocryphal, invented centuries later by Christian writers. So what really happened? Most likely the Great Library didn't vanish in a single blaze, but rather eroded slowly through war, politics, religious extremism, and sheer neglect. Scrolls decayed, shelves emptied, the scholars stopped coming. By the time the modern world realized what had been lost, it was already too late. What was truly lost? It's impossible to calculate the scale of the loss. Some historians believe the Great Library may have contained 90% of the world's written knowledge at the time. Imagine if we had the original plays of Sophocles that never survived, the medical texts of ancient India, Persia, and Egypt in full, Or maps that revealed civilizations now forgotten? Could we have landed on the moon centuries earlier, cured diseases faster, avoided dark ages entirely? Some experts argue that the destruction of the library set back human progress by 500 to 1,000 years.
Oh, yes.
Others caution against exaggeration, reminding us that much of ancient knowledge also survived in Islamic, Indian, and Chinese libraries. But the fact remains. What was once the largest treasure trove of human thought vanished, with almost no trace. The greatest tragedy. We may never know what we lost. Was it really destroyed or hidden? And yet some refuse to believe that everything was lost. Could scrolls from the Great Library have been smuggled out to Athens, Constantinople, or even India? It are whispers of hidden archives buried under Alexandria itself. Some researchers believe secret vaults still lie beneath the modern city, sealed off by centuries of ruins and concrete. Others point to the great libraries that rose in its shadow, like the Library of Pergamon, or the famed House of Wisdom in Baghdad, which may have inherited fragments of Alexandria's lost knowledge. Of course, there are conspiracy theories. That the Vatican holds ancient scrolls in sealed vaults. That secret societies protect forbidden knowledge. The library wasn't destroyed at all, but hidden to protect its power. Far-fetched, maybe, but until the sands of Alexandria give up their secrets, the legend of the library remains unsolved. Legacy of the library. Though the Great Library of Alexandria no longer stands, its legacy continues to shape the world. It became a symbol of knowledge, ambition, and fragility. A reminder that even the most brilliant achievements of civilization can vanish if they are not protected. Today, institutions like the Library of Congress, the British Library, and the Internet Archive are, in many ways, spiritual successors driven by the same idea that human knowledge must be gathered, preserved, and shared. In 2002, Egypt unveiled the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, a stunning, modern library built near the original site. It's a tribute to what was lost and what might be regained. With over 8 million books, reading halls, museums, and a digital archive, it stands as a beacon for global learning. But no matter how advanced our modern libraries become, the ghost of Alexandria reminds us that once lost, knowledge may never return. That's the real cost of destruction. The Great Library of Alexandria wasn't just a building. It was an idea that all the world's knowledge could be brought together, studied, debated, and understood. And its destruction wasn't just a historical event. It was a tragedy that still echoes through time. In its ashes lies a warning. The truth is fragile, that progress must be protected, and that when we lose our past, we risk losing our future too. So the next time you open a book, search online, or learn something new, remember the library. And remember those who dared to believe that knowledge belonged to everyone. Because even if the scrolls are gone, the dream is still alive.